Tonight on News 5 Live, the Ministry of Health contradicts BWS. It says the discolored water running in your pipes does not meet World Health Organization's standards. Nelson Ayuso perishes in a road traffic accident near Ontario Village. Still reeling from a prolonged drought, a bug is now wreaking havoc in the sugar industry up north. The CCJ holds court in Belize. The Maya Leaders Alliance and the government-appointed Maya Land Rights Commission appear before the judicial arm. And the cost of living remained much the same in September as it was in 2018. Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast.
KTV Latino, you can vote for your favorite contestant by using your Digiphone or your smartphone. Digi users will text only the contestant's number and send to 5888. Each text sent is equal to 1 vote, so text as many times as you want. Smart users will text the number of votes followed by a space, then the contestant's number and send to 5885. Here are this week's contestants.
Yo te quiero, vida mía, no lo puedo yo negar, porque sueño con el día en que me puedas amar.
Llorando estará recordando el amor que un día no supo cuidar.
Ven que el tiempo corre y no se para. De que me gustas es verdad, de que te quiero es verdad.
Ay, amor, quédate muy dentro. Aquí está tu rosa linda para vivir en tus sueños.
Remember, voting ends on Sunday at midnight. KTV Latino Season 4. It's hot, it's live, and it's only on 5.
KTV Latino.
Good evening. Welcome to News 5 Live for Wednesday, October 30th. I am Marlene Cuellar. There's not good news for Belize City residents who consume or use potable water, which is showing discoloration. The Ministry of Health today confirmed that the dirty-looking water pouring out of your pipes is unsafe for consumption. Earlier this week, CEO of the Belize Water Services, Alvin Haynes, appeared on national television and said, quote, "The slight discoloration of the water, and sometimes it is worse than slight, the first thing we have seen is that the water is not unsafe," unquote. Residents of the Old Capital have been bitterly complaining that their water has been gushing out in a reddish-brown color, and this, according to BWS, is caused by an increase of iron. After reports surfaced, the Ministry of Health deployed its water analysts to collect samples from the Belize River, BWS main source of water for the city, and ran tests to establish the quality and safety of the water. Anthony Flowers says that results show that the water quality does not meet the standards of the World Health Organization and is not safe for public consumption.
The results from the brown water or discolored water indicated to us that the water quality does not meet the World Health Organization guidelines for drinking water, meaning that it's not suitable for drinking, essentially because when we do the testing of drinking water, we look at different parameters, bacteriological and some what we call physical chemical parameters. And if any of these parameters are outside the normal values set by the World Health Organization guidelines for drinking water, then we would deem that water not suitable for drinking. And so in this case, the discolored water, we had one particular parameter that we found that was not within the acceptable range, that was turbidity. The turbidity of the water is basically looking at how clear the water is. And when we did our test, we found that the turbidity in that particular sample that we tested, it was twice the accepted value. And hence, we would not deem that water suitable for drinking. When the water clears up, the samples that we did on those, it was acceptable. But the brown water, it did not meet all the WHO guidelines that would cause us to render that water safe for drinking. We didn't have an issue with the bacteriological quality of the water, but I do know, yes, that increased iron in drinking water can lead to a rise in what we call iron bacteria. And that would proliferate and cause the water to even take on more of that reddish brown color.
According to Flowers, the water is equally not suitable for other domestic use such as bathing, cooking, and washing of white clothes. He says that the turbidity is twice the level prescribed by the World Health Organization.
In terms of other domestic use like washing, particularly white clothes, it will not be suitable for that. And as well, looking at bathing, you also have to look at that as well, right? Because I said when the water has that increased turbidity, we do not know what all are the particles in it. And so you would want to allow that to settle out or something before using the clearer portion to bathe with, for example. But it would be objectionable from the taste standpoint, right? Because drinking water with increased iron in it lends to a bitter taste beside the color. And then I said it can also stain your laundry if you wash your clothes with it. Increased turbidity, you have a lot of particles in there, so you could have bacteria that are attached to those particles. So that's where the safety aspect of it comes in, right? So the turbidity has to be below a certain value. In this case, it's 5. It has to be 5 or less for it to be deemed acceptable for drinking. Anything above that lead to rises in terms of the water having that cloudy appearance. Again, for cooking, you have to look in terms of what you will be doing with that, right? And so it's not in its present state acceptable for use once it comes out in that brown state.
While BWS and the ministry look at addressing the problem, a temporary solution would be to flush out the discolored water until it becomes clear and safe for consumption and use. We reached out to CEO Haynes to respond to the findings of Flowers. He told News 5 that at no time did he say that the dirty water was safe for consumption. According to Haynes, iron bacteria in the water is not a health risk. He says that the issue has subsided tremendously.
The slight discoloration of the water, and sometimes it's perhaps worse than slight, but that based on what we've seen, the water is not unsafe. So the simple solution is usually to run the water for a little bit so that clears up, and then it's perfectly good. The main problem with the discoloration is that it would stain white clothes in the laundry. But other than that, it's safe to bathe, it's safe to give to use to cook, it's safe to give the dogs to drink or for people to drink, etc.
From the Ministry of Health standpoint, we are not deeming the brown water to be suitable for drinking. That's basically our view, that the brown water as it comes out of your tap should not be used for drinking because it is not safe from the standpoint I just explained to you why we would say that.
So his comments were basically erroneous?
Well, I didn't listen to Mr. Haynes' comments totally, but I can just say from our standpoint, that is our viewpoint, that the brown water is not safe based on the fact that you have increased levels of iron and turbidity.
Sir, and is the ministry in communication with BWS, to figure out why?
Yes. I must say that we are working with BWS actually for the past 2 days. We have been out in the fields along the Belize River at different points because we are still not able to ascertain what exactly is causing this. And so we were out in the fields for 2 days looking at the river, the raw water source, because as you know, for Belize City, the source is the Belize River, where they have the abstraction point there at Double Run. And so we have been out with them collecting samples. We are now processing those samples to see if this increased iron is coming from the raw water itself or it's some other operational parameter within the system.
We believe that the main increase was caused by the first onset of unusually heavy rains back about the 14th, 15th of October. It implies that land clearing has caused soil to be washed into the river because iron is a natural component in the soil and has increased the levels, and that will subside, hopefully.
I cannot at this time say yes that by the end of the week the issue will be resolved, because I said if we don't know what exactly is the cause, then it's kind of difficult to put a firm date in terms of resolution of it. When we know, then that will help us in terms of looking at the solution. One possible thing that they can do is to add a chemical, right, called Sequest, that will put the iron in solution. It doesn't remove it, but it puts it in solution. And we will be monitoring more, right? So we will continue to do that monitoring until we can resolve this issue.
Police were called out to the scene of an accident on the George Price Highway where a man was killed and another escaped the deadly wreck. Two well-known men, contractor Emer Hernandez was behind the wheel and Nelson Ayuso was in the passenger seat of a truck when Hernandez lost control of his pickup truck and went flying off the highway, killing Ayuso. Reporter Andrea Polanco tells us more about the popular personality that was Ayuso.
41-year-old Nelson Ayuso was killed in a road traffic accident on Tuesday night. He was traveling in the front passenger seat in this pickup truck when it ran off the road and overturned between miles 55 and 56 between Ontario and Blackman Eddy on the Western Highway. The vehicle landed in a drain and crashed into some rocks. It was being driven at the time by building contractor Emer Hernandez, who lost control and crashed. He sustained only minor injuries. Ayuso's death comes as a shock to his close friend Paula Ack. She says he had many dreams to accomplish.
This morning when I actually got to find out the news, and I was shocked, and I said how he died, that was the first thing I said. I knew he was not sick. He was a very talented guy. He was into screen printing, all the plans. I know many days he used to tell me about things that he wanted to do. So I knew when I heard today that he had passed away, that there are many plans that he had. And it's a pity that he died this way, very young. So it is for us at the United Democratic Party and the people who actually get to know Nelson, it is a great loss for us, and we are mourning his death.
Ayuso, who owned a screen printing business, was well known. He was a strong and loyal supporter of the United Democratic Party. The wider public also got to know Ayuso for his comedic roles in television commercials, such as the Picot ads and the McMurrich episodes.
We were very good friends, and even from when the UDP was in opposition, from that time we were very good friends. So I can tell you it's way back. Personally, knowing him when we were walking on the campaign trail, he was a political animal. That's how I knew him. People did see a bit of the human that he was, the comic side of him when he used to do even the ads, the Picot ads that he used to do when he used to order the food. But that was a part of him.
Ayuso is described as an easygoing guy with a big personality. He was always friendly and outgoing.
He was always bubbly. There was never a dull moment whenever you were with him. He was full of life. In fact, just this morning when I was doing my show, I even said when Nelson was on a diet, when he said he was on diet, it was $10 tacos and over. That was a diet for him. And I used to always tell him, I said, Nelson, $10, oh my God, you know. And he says, no, he said, see, I have to keep this sexy body. So this was the type of person he was. My condolences to his Kamala wife, his daughter, his family in Orange Walk, the Martinez and Ayuso family, and the extended family that he has throughout the years, friends that he made that became family to him, because for him we were never just friends, we were like family.
Reporting for News 5, I'm Andrea Polanco.
News 5 has received word that Dangriga police are investigating the sudden death of an 18-year-old mother of two from the south. Shali Polanco was taken to the Southern Regional Hospital on October 23rd after she reportedly ingested poison. She died several days later on October 26th at the hospital. On Monday, the police said that they would not report on the matter because it is being treated as a suicide. And as you know, suicides are rarely reported in the news. But today, the family is breaking its silence and making a very strong allegation. The family believes that the mother of two was poisoned. Today, News 5 spoke with Polanco's mother, Estela, who says that her daughter told them and the police that she was choked and forced to drink poison. As we said, it is a serious allegation.
I believe she was murdered because she was living an abusing life with this young man. And when I went to the hospital, when I received this message first, it was on Thursday night at around 8 p.m. or 9 in the night. I went to the hospital that Friday morning. He was fighting when he saw me there. He wanted to know when and how I found out that my daughter was in the hospital.
Now we're understanding that she confessed to police or someone about what had happened to her. Talk to us about that.
Yes, sir. He had told the police that he choked her, he beat her, and in the hospital, she still was in there, and he told her that he choked her in the hospital. And he's the one that forced down the poison in her mouth. And while she was lying down there on the bed, and I was there, her boyfriend, me as her mother, and a pastor, Richard, was there when she got up from her bed 3 times, and she told the boy, look to him straight in his face, and tell the boy, finish, kill me. That's what she told the boy directly in front of me and the pastor Richard. And the young man kneeled down to me and told me, Mr. Stella, please forgive me for what I did to your daughter. That's what he told me. I told him, I'm sorry, I can't forgive you. Because my daughter didn't want to see it, but I cannot forgive you, or his God can forgive you. My daughter looked on us 3 times. Finish killing me.
According to Estella, the boyfriend was detained by the police on Saturday and later released on Monday because there was insufficient evidence to levy a charge on him. Today she was back at the police station seeking answers. Estella says she wants justice for the death of her daughter.
They let him go on Monday. So he's out with his 2 kids. Don't know where he is right now. And I don't think it is correct for him to be out because he is supposed to be locked up for this case. It was poison. He told the police he didn't in a white container with something white in and it. That's why she told the police in front of me, and the police now write that down. The police now write no statement what he would say.
Now she was forced to drink this?
Yes, because she told the police to choke her. Now I told the police, and the police now write that down.
Shiley's 18-month-old daughter and 4-month-old son remain with their father, who News 5 has been told has relocated to another village. Coming up, the Caribbean Court of Justice sessions in Belize. It gets a status report on a 2015 ruling on the Maya land rights case involving the Maya Leaders Alliance and a government-appointed commission.
Good night, people.
There was an itinerant sitting of the Caribbean Court of Justice here in Belize City this morning inside courtroom number 1 of the Supreme Court. The Maya Leaders Alliance, as well as representatives from the Attorney General's office, appeared once again before the appellate jurisdiction to present compliance and status reports in line with a consent order handed down in April 2015 involving Maya land rights. Since then, the court has held several post-judgment sittings to monitor the implementation of the court order. The MLA, led by spokesperson Christina Koch, along with others from 23 indigenous communities in southern Belize, was present this morning. This is the second itinerant sitting of the CCJ in Belize, with the previous session being held in April 2015. Following today's session, Koch spoke with the media.
Today, at the compliance hearing, we were subject to making reports, both sides, on the progress that we have made and some of the issues that remain with respect to the implementation of the consent order. You will appreciate and understand that the consent order, paragraph 4 in particular, talks about an order where the government has to cease and desist from granting any further concessions, whether that be permits or otherwise, that might affect the use and enjoyment of the lands by the Maya people, of course, without their free, prior, informed consent. In light of not yet having legislative mechanisms to protect these rights that have been affirmed by the court, we move to institute or to develop a framework for dispute resolution in the interim. The dispute resolution framework is really to help to address some of the incursions, the ongoing incursions. Some of those include illegal logging concessions that are granted, oil exploration that is also being pursued on Maya lands currently as we speak, and to begin to look at where land might have been sold or granted to third-party interests or even to government agencies. And so we, with the assistance of the court and the supervision of the court, were able to agree on a dispute resolution framework. That dispute resolution framework mandated that an authority be appointed, mutually agreed upon by both parties.
According to Koch, following the CCJ's consent order, the government of Belize individually selected Dinah Shelton, Professor Emeritus of George Washington University Law School, as the expert to guide the process forward. In light of Shelton's existing health condition, another consultant has since been chosen to succeed her, but government is yet to formalize that appointment.
The initial authority that was appointed, of course, unilaterally by the government, was Professor Dinah Shelton, an expert on Indigenous people's rights. Sadly, her medical condition prevented her from continuing that position, and because of that, we have seen some delays in an appointment of a second authority or another authority to replace Professor Shelton. We recently learned through the authority herself that she has been appointed. This is Dean Solario, Rosa Solario from George Washington University. She is also a very credible and expert in her own right on Indigenous people's rights, on international human rights norms and standards. And so the appellant and the Maya people have no objections to her appointment. We are only concerned that the appointment continues to be delayed and that the necessary support mechanism for Dean Solario to begin her work is not yet in place. For instance, the government took an undertaking to provide a mechanism in which we could submit our complaints by way of establishing an email account. It has been months and that email account has not been submitted or communicated to us. We heard in the court today that they couldn't give a decision as to a timeline of when an email account is to be set up for this authority. Also, the government took an undertaking to provide a clerk from either the Supreme Court or the Magistrates Court to assist this authority to collect and file claims and to be able to support Dean Solario in beginning to review some of these incursions and these complaints that are coming before her office. It's a little bit disheartening that we didn't get a full commitment as to a timeline, as to a time commitment when this is going to happen.
Since being identified as Shelton's successor, the Maya Leaders Alliance has reached out to Dean Rosa Solario, also an academic administrator at George Washington University Law School. Cox says several complaints have been forwarded to Solario for her perusal ahead of the formal appointment.
We have reached out to the authority herself. The court at the last compliance hearing basically pressured the government to say that the appointment cannot be unilateral, and at the very minimum, the appellants should have some say, some feedback as to the person that was being considered for this appointment. And with that, the government agreed that we would have a meeting with this authority, and after that meeting we would provide our response whether or not we gave our recommendation for her to be appointed. We had a wonderful meeting with Dean Solario and realized that as much as the Maya people are feel the urgency of having this authority function, she also felt that it was imperative for her to begin her work as soon as possible. And as a result, because it is in the interest of the Maya people to continue to safeguard and steward our resources, we were able to take the first 3 complaints that we had previously submitted to Dinah Shelton and forward those directly to Dean Solario. We took that on our own accord to do because we cannot continue to assume that this will be done by the government. We are happy to hear that they also submitted the complaints to her, but we have yet to see any result, any concrete resolution of any of these complaints.
Earlier this month, the Supreme Court dismissed a case against the government of Belize that was brought by Manuel Pop, who at the time was first alcalde of Santa Cruz Village, which is one of 23 indigenous communities. The lawsuit against government and Rupert Miles was filed in 2016, whereby the claimant was seeking damages. This succeeded 2 incidents, the first being an altercation with Miles by residents of Santa Cruz, during which he was bound at the wrists and ankles and paraded through the village. Secondly, the homes of those villagers were raided during a pre-dawn operation in the wake of the incident in which Miles was arrested and evicted from Santa Cruz. Justice Michelle Arana ruled, however, that Miles did not act as an agent of the state. According to Koch, while they await the process of delimiting and defining Maya communal lands, there should be a cease and desist from allowing any new developments in areas that are deemed indigenous lands.
In terms of the case that was dismissed, this was a case, you will remember the Rupert Miles case. The village of Santa Cruz filed a case against the government of Belize and also against Rupert Miles, in addition against the incursion that happened on the Maya temple site. This was a trespass case. The court, I won't comment on the integrity of the judiciary or why they came to that decision, but the court decided that they could not continue with the case, that they dismissed the case on the reasoning that it was hard to tell, for them to tell if it was a trespass case because the Maya lands have yet to be demarcated, delimited, and defined. This is an obligation of the government, so it's the government's failure to clearly define, delimit the territory that has raised the question of whether or not trespass can be determined. I will give you my opinion, and the opinion of the Maya people is such that this paragraph 4 of the consent order was in fact there in order to put in interim measures as we wait for the implementation until such time as Maya land rights have been protected through new legislation there is a measure to cease and desist from granting any further development on Maya lands that might seek to interfere with the use and enjoyment of those lands.
According to the Statistical Institute of Belize, prices for household goods and services in September remained much the same as last year, except for a minimal 0.1% decrease. The SIB notes that higher prices for various food items, as well as tertiary education, were offset by lower prices for fuel, home rental costs, and international airfares. The inflation rate between January and September stood at 0.2%. There was a slight increase of 0.8% in the prices of meats, including beefsteak, pigtail, and chicken. Additionally, higher prices for several fruits and vegetables such as pineapples, sweet peppers, onions, tomatoes, and cabbages contributed to the overall increase in this category. But lower prices were recorded in ground beef, pork chops, red kidney beans, and watermelons. As it relates to imports in the same period, imported goods stood at $141 million, down by $0.9 million for the same period last year. Imports in machinery and transport equipment declined by $5.3 million to $29.3 million due to reduced imports in aviation and telecommunications equipment. There was also a reduction in purchases of corrugated steel rods and galvanized coils. Manufactured goods dropped by $2.6 million to $18 million. Mineral fuels and lubricants went down to $19.3 million. After the break, a bug is threatening sugar production in the Corozal and Orange Walk districts.
The Belize Social
Still reeling from a prolonged drought in which farmers stand to lose as much as $50 million, the sugar industry is now battling with a pest known as a sugarcane looper. The bug has been wreaking havoc in acres of cane fields in the Corozal and Orange Walk districts. According to the experts in the industry, the looper is not entirely new, but has flourished due to the drought. Its effect will be felt in the quality of sugar, which is expected to decrease in the long term. Dalila Kal and Dwayne Moody worked on this report.
We know that the pest is here. The grass looper is severely affecting the entire sugar belt, Corozal and Orange Walk, and for sure there will be huge losses attributed to the grass looper.
These are grass loopers, also referred to as sugarcane loopers, which move in a looper fashion. These caterpillars are pale green and brown in color and feed on various grasses, and when available sugarcane, they move in looper fashion. There are various species, and this little guy here and his looper friends are presently causing havoc within the sugar industry, eating their way through hundreds of acres of fields for some weeks now.
We have been receiving reports from farmers in the second week of October. So as the technical arm of the industry, we decided to take action immediately. We did a quick assessment to the entire sugar belt, which is called Corozal and Orange Walk, on the 22nd and the 23rd. What we encountered is the entire sugar belt had the presence of the pest. Nevertheless, the Corozal district is the one that has the most presence, which was in the high count or high economic threshold of this insect pest.
They are not new pests, but this particular year they have enjoyed the extended drought.
When the drought conditions are here, as the name says, there's not enough rain or precipitation, and that actually triggers for all insect pests to be present in the industry. The incidence of this insect pest is increasing, so for sure we know we will have an impact, but it's a matter of time to have a complete scenario, to have exact data as to what are the magnitudes and the amount of acres that will be lost attributed to the grass looper.
Eggs hatch in 3 to 6 days, then enter the larvae stage before pupating into a pale brown moth.
The larva, which is the stage that causes most of the damage, lives 20 to 25 days in the larva stage. And those 20 to 25 days feeding day and night until it turns into pupa stage. One larva can feed 4 or to 5 kilos in his whole life stage of being a larva. Imagine only one feeding on the mass green production. Imagine you have 100 or 1,000 larvas. What can they do 2-3 days?
Let's say the field is to 0.5 to 3.5 months. It will recover. The leaves will come back. And if it's 8 months and above, the stocks are already defined, so there won't be much of an impact when it comes to its production. But again, when it's between 4 to 8, it's where it will indeed, it's a fact, it will affect its productivity. It will reduce the production, the tons of acre for that cane field in particular.
The rains are expected to decrease the number of larvae, but farmers can take action to reduce the impacts.
If you have more than 0.5 larvas per plant, you can start your chemical control. That will be a fast knockdown. We advise farmers to visit your cane field, since this pest is an opportunistic pest, where he moves through the pastures, the grasses, where that is his primary host. And from there, when we have big amounts, like right now, the environmental factors are favorable for them to reproduce. When they reach the cane fields, they will also feed on the cane fields and devastate them in 2-3 days, depending on the population that we have.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
When we come back, we'll have an update from the citrus industry.
Improving
Security Board, safeguarding you, your family, your future.
The month of October has come to an end, and there is still no pay in sight for employees of the Citrus Growers Association. For the past several weeks, members of the administrative staff have not received their bi-monthly salaries, and bills are mounting up at home and at work. It's an unfortunate situation that has befallen these workers, several of them who have been with the association for the past 14 years. While outspoken CGA member Anthony Chinona took it upon himself to prepare a document proposing a way forward for the embattled citrus industry, the plight of the CGA employees brings home the dire need for financial restructuring.
I remember recently following the Prime Minister's meeting that I felt I had a moral obligation to act to try to do something. And I formulated a plan of action and submitted that to the CGA. And basically it had 3 R's. R, the reality check, what is the extent of the CGA's debt, the restructuring, and the reunification. But those are the core issues affecting the CGA. Unfortunately, since that paper was submitted, I have not heard back from the CGA as to what plan of action they might be planning, but certainly there has not been a plan of action, and I am not prepared to meet with a committee to discuss committee matters. This has gone past that stage. And I am saddened to learn that there are certain members of staff, the nuts and bolts of the Citrus Growers Association, our faithful employees, are not being paid. And they have no fault in this situation. They are not part of the demise. They have done their part, they need to be paid. And so, quite frankly, I think the CGA has to act. I think Mr. Cleland, the CEO, needs to address the press on this issue. But the CGA has to act. We have shares in CPDL, we have land. We need to liquidate some of these assets, and we need to pay our staff. That is the immediate priority that needs urgent attention. It is not fair to our members of staff who have faithfully provided our services all these years for not being paid these past 3 months. That's not fair.
According to Chinona, a general meeting of the membership of the Citrus Growers Association has not taken place since 2014, when the last AGM was convened at his insistence. Since then, there's been no audited financials of the association.
Mr. Chinona, can you tell me when last the CGA met with its membership, and has there been any discussion to call either a special meeting or an extraordinary meeting if that were the case?
The last special AGM was one that I petitioned along with over 100 growers. And that, I need not go into the details, but that was met very disrespectfully. And following that special AGM, which I challenged them for their audited financials, that was not forthcoming. We met in Red Bank, I think it was 2014. Since that date, there has been no approved budget. There has been no elections of officers. There's been no report. I understand that it costs money to have these meetings, but that is not an excuse not to have the information provided. We have WhatsApp, we have all these other electronic ways of meeting, and we can meet on Citrus Streamman. We don't need to meet on a tent, and we don't need translators, and we don't need food. This is our association, this is our business, and we are interested in trying to keep our association alive. And the CGA has been too silent. I am challenging them, calling them out to come to the media and address their actions, and they need to meet with staff and allay their fears of how they will be paid. I do not think it is fair for the staff to be in the position it's in, and I really am saddened to learn of this situation. I was made to understand that on the Plant World issue, CPDL has stepped into the picture and they have placed personnel at Plant World to secure their advanced investments. So they have taken some action there, and rightly so, because the CGA is cash strapped. But the same way CPDL has stepped into Plant World, I think the CGA personnel that are managing the association need to step into the picture, pay our creditors, pay our staff.
The government has responded to the complaints made by the PUP regarding the appointment of known UDP supporters to water boards in villages across the country. The PUP said earlier this week that the appointment of new board members is strictly political and that the Ministry of Rural Development has dismissed the proposal made by PUP village councils. But a release from the government says that all 107 village water boards are being set up with consultation as required by the Village Council Act. The statement says, quote, "Some area representatives, both government and opposition, have made suggestions of persons they wish to have appointed to the various water boards. There are also some villages for which recommendations have not been submitted. The ministry is reviewing the suggestions received, identifying persons for consideration, and consulting with the required officials as set out in the law," unquote. But according to the PUP, the ministry is not consulting with the village councils, but rather rejecting proposals and appointing known UDP supporters. In response to the allegations made by Sand Creek West Area Representative Rodwell Ferguson, the ministry says that Ferguson and some village council representatives sent a letter to the ministry complaining about the proposed appointees and shared the complaints with the media even before the ministry could respond in the spirit of consultation. Coming up after the break, a training to improve the role of first responders during emergencies.
Hey TV Latino, you can vote for your favorite contestant by using your Digiphone or your smartphone. Digi users will text only the contestant's number and send to 5888. Each text sent is equal to one vote, so text as many times as you want. Smart users will text the number of votes followed by a space, then the contestant's number and send to 5885. Here are this week's contestants.
Yo te quiero, vida mía, no lo puedo yo negar, porque sueño con el día en que me puedas amar.
Llorando estará recordando el amor que un día no supo cuidar.
Ven que el tiempo corre y no se para.
Que me gustas es verdad, de que te quiero es verdad.
Ay, amor, quédate muy dentro. Aquí está tu rosa linda para vivir en tus sueños.
Remember, voting ends on Sunday at midnight. KTV Latino Season 4. It's hot, it's live, and it's only on 5.
KTV Latino.
Do more this October with our spooktacular next-gen deals. Enjoy 1 month free on any of our services and get free reconnection when you join the next-gen family.
Port of Belize Limited, a port with a global perspective.
A health disaster management training for first responders is taking place in Belize City. It is being facilitated by the Pan American Health Organization with funding from the European Union's Health Sector Reform Program that seeks to smarten health facilities. Global Affairs Canada also co-financed the program to standardize the role of first responders in times of emergency. News 5's Dwayne Moody reports.
Since Monday, the Pan American Health Organization has been facilitating a training on emergency care and treatment for first responders at the Biltmore Plaza in Belize City. Over the years, there have been disjointed responses to emergencies, and the workshop seeks to bring together all agencies that respond to emergencies in an effort to preserve lives. The training will standardize the process across first responders.
This is basically an interagency work that we're trying to gather and have a little bit more of the capacity that is required when we have to provide that life-saving measures. Not just on the hospital, but also when we are on site, on the road, and so on.
So the sessions are practical and theoretical?
It is very practical. You should come you should come later on and see that, you'll see some of the participants trying to practice what they've learned. For example, yesterday we have done some bandaging, how to lift patients, how to immobilize patients. This afternoon we'll be doing some splinting and caring for wounds and so on.
A key stakeholder is the Ministry of Health, which provides personnel from across the country with updated training on emergency care procedures, specifically needed during times of disasters. Coupled with the services of the emergency medical technicians from birth and the like, Principal Public Health Inspector says that first responders are key to the survival of victims in times of accidents, fires, and even mass casualty events.
For this year, we had a number of trainings slated. We started with the mass casualty management training. We had the incident command system, and now we're having emergency care and treatment. In terms of disaster, the Ministry of Health is always responsible to ensure that the cadre of staff or people who respond to disaster as it relates to health are trained and have the specialized skills. Critical to the entire process is that in most major emergencies that we've had, people have been working in isolation. So the police would respond, the fire would be respond, but then they start tripping over each other because, you know, they have not been used to responding in a coordinated fashion. And so we need to ensure that everybody is clear in terms of their roles and responsibilities as it pertains to disaster management.
The training shows the shortfalls in terms of coordination among agencies. While the National Emergency Management Organization is the coordinating arm within government in times of disasters, John Bowden says that there is the need for a central response system.
A central response system which combines all the different agencies together to respond to the emergency. So we should be seeing more often people responding as a joint agency and not necessarily independently.
I think the committee exists already at the national level. It just needs to be strengthened, and I think there's always room for improvement, for coordination. And I think Belize is on a good track in that sense.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
And that's the news. Don't forget that tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/News5Live. I'm Marlene Coyar. Thanks for joining us. And from all of us here at News 5, good night.